Good evening, everyone. This is Tina. How are you doing today? In this video, we're gonna talk about aspect-oriented programming. And let me switch to the OneNote. Okay. Before we head into the aspect-oriented programming, I want to talk a little bit about object-oriented programming and what's the problem we're gonna facing and why do we need aspect program. Okay. So when we're using the OO, mostly we will work with the object. We will define the class, and in the class we will have the properties and the behavior, which is the methods, and we create the objects, right? We create the objects using those classes, right? And object C. And suppose in this object we have the properties or called instance variables, or we can say data. Okay, data is good or not good. Let's just using instance variables. Okay, I think we can call the data because those instance variables hold the data. Okay, and we also have methods, right? And same thing for object B, and we will have the methods. Methods is a behavior for the you can invoke and you can call them. And now suppose we want to have some features, which is before calling the methods in the object A, I want to have some login information. And also before call the methods inside the object B, I want to do some logging. And also for the entire application, and before call all the methods in application, I want to have some log information. Okay, so what we need to do previously is we have a method called the log message. Okay, then for each method, for every methods inside the object A, we will call log message first, then execute other logic in each object, in each method. And the same thing for object B methods, we will call log message first, this method first. And also for other object you have inside your application, for all the methods, we will call log message, which is log some informations first, then execute other logic in each method. So what's the problem of that? The problem that is you have repeated the code like a log message in every object, right? And they are tightly coupled. And suppose this log message method is to using log4j. And later on you want to change the entire application to have another way to do logging. So what do you need to do? You have to change every place, all the methods inside all the objects, which is not good. And we have another way to do that. Since we are doing object-oriented programming, how about we have a logger here? We create another class and the log message. This method is inside the logger. And then we don't need to have a log message in each class. And instead, we can call logger dot, if it's a static method, right? We can call logger dot log message. And if it's not a static method, then we have to initialize the logger inside the object A, object B, and all others. Then we call log message, okay, using the object of the logger to do that. And by doing this way, okay, your log message is in one place. So if you change it to using another log way, you can just change the log message, this method inside logger. But you are facing the same problem because in object A, object B, you have to using new logger, right? And here you have to using new logger. you're still facing a problem. You cannot change the code in one place and apply the change the code in one place and applied across entire application. You have to change for in each class, every class using logger if you change a letter. And there's another problem. So the first problem is cannot change once. Change the entire, okay, at once. Okay, you have to change it in every class which you have a reference on the logger. The other way, probably this one can be achieved if you're using inheritance, like your class A, class B, all of them inherit from a logger. So anyway, but when we inherit from logger, it's not a good design, okay? And the second one, sometimes we want find the most important classes in our diagram. So when you have a project, you want to create a class diagram. And from the class diagram, and we want to find who is the most important class inside your current design, okay? And to figure it out, most likely we will take a look at which object or which class is referenced the most by other classes. And if we have a class diagram based on the design like this way, you will find out the logger, this object, will be the most important model inside your class diagram, because for every other class, it will have a reference to the logger. But as we know, logger, this class doesn't have any relationship with our business logic, right? So it makes us confused because from a class diagram, logger is the most important, right? So this is the second question, which is you have too many relationships related to the cross-cutting object, which is this one. This is called the cross-cutting object. So by using this design this way, which is not good. And what is the other way? The same thing. We have the object A. Okay, you have a data, which is the properties hold the data, and you have the methods, right? You have the object B, and you have a data here, which are properties, and you have the methods. Okay, and instead we create a logger class. We will create something called still a logger class, but we will have a special name called logger aspect. Logger aspect is a normal Java class, but in this aspect, you will define what kind of features. Suppose this one is a logger message, okay? And you will define other things like a point card. We will talk about later. And logger aspect you defined, okay? And the logger, which is a functionality you want, is inside of this class. But instead, we initialize like a new logger or new log aspect in other classes. We will have something called aspect configuration. Okay, when the Spring starts your application, okay, you will have something called aspect configuration. And when we execute the methods in other object, like a regular object A and B, before execute the methods here, he will take a look at the aspect configuration. Do I need to execute the device inside the logger aspect? If it has, it will execute methods in the log aspect, then execute the object methods, regular object. So from the design here, you can see the object A and object B has no relationship with the logger aspect. But at the runtime, Spring will read your configurations to decide, do I need to execute the code inside this class before other methods is executed in regular classes. And it also achieve the things is, suppose you want to change the feature for the logger. You just change one place, and if you want to change the configuration, you just change the configurations. And at the runtime, it will automatically works. You don't need to touch other, you don't need to touch other regular classes. Suppose later on you want to have something for the security. You can have a security aspect. Okay, and if you want to do transaction, you can have a transaction aspect. Okay, then you have to do the configuration, and there's no need to have the code change in the regular classes. So this is aspect-oriented programming, which is different from OO. In OO, in other class, you have to have relationship with the logger. But when we do aspect-oriented programming, we have the aspect and have the configuration. You don't need to have the relationship between the regular classes with those aspect. Okay. So next one, let's talk a little bit about the cross-cutting concern. Because not all the things you need aspect, only when you want to have some cross-cutting concerns. And for cross-cutting concern, two parts. The first part, concern. Concern is what? Is a feature. Okay, like login is a feature. Transaction is a feature. Security, like authentication, authorization, they are all features. And we remember there's another principle called separation of concerns, right? Those concerns is the feature. We separate our features in different layers, right? We have a presentation, we have the business, we have the repository. And what are the cross-cutting? Cross-cutting means you have some features which will be used in entire application, like a login, like auditing, like the here transaction, which those features will be used across entire application. Okay, this is called cross-cutting concerns. So what are cross-cutting concerns? Like a login, right? Suppose you want to have a login for all the methods, right? And transaction. Transaction is what? Before execute the code like a persist to the database, we have to start the transaction. And after the persist to the database, and we have to close the transaction. So before execute particular logic, we have to do something before that, and we have to do something after that. This is transaction. And there are like auditing, okay, like security. Like when you do security, like to do authentication, authorization, right? Where before execute the save method, we have to check if they have the right permission to do that. And before access this URL, it has to be a logged in user, something like that. So cross-cutting concerns, there are a lot of ways to do that. It's not AOP is one way. It have other ways, like you can using the filter. If you learned serverless, you must learn about a filter, which is one cross-cutting concern technology, right? And the Spring security is totally based on the filter. And in Spring, it have something which is similar to filter interceptor, right? And you also have the AOP to do that. Those are all cross-cutting concern technology. In Spring, it also have one annotation called controller advice. Do you remember? Okay, this is kind of our annotation, annotated way to do the cross-cutting concern. Okay, and in this method, you can have handle the exception or model attribute or init binder, those things. So for the cross-cutting concern, okay, how to wire aspect to the target. Originally, if we want to invoke, we directly invoke method A, right? And like suppose using object, something called the A method. But at the runtime, Spring will read the configuration to do something else. Probably before actually execute the A, you will execute the aspect method. And after this method A is executed, we will execute another aspect method. When you write a code, you directly call object.a, but at the runtime, the actual flow will be, we'll call aspect method first, okay, and then it will call method A, and then it will call this is the target method, okay, and then it will call another aspect. And the aspect method can be login, security, or the transaction. Like here is a starter transaction, here is a close transaction. Here is the APIs you connect to the database, like persist. Okay, so in this video, we just have a basic introduction to AOP. Why do we need to have aspect-oriented programming? What kind of problem it solves? Hope you understand after watching this video. And for my next video, I will have a demo probably for this understanding the proxy used in the AOP. So if you are interested, you can take a look at. Okay. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.